Good morning, evening, midnight, whenever the hell you're listening. Thank you regardless, and welcome to Genuine Unintelligence. I want to apologize first. It was quite a while in between the episodes here. It's been quite the hell of a week, and also if you hear me struggling to breathe, or hopefully I don't manage to not cough in your ear there, allergies are pretty bad, so I'm obviously already dead on the inside because I'm doing this podcast, but hopefully I'm not dead on the outside before I get this done today. But regardless, thank you for listening. Today's topic was actually something I did not plan from the original. I had a couple ideas, and while I was kind of brainstorming, this kind of dawned on me. I think this will be fun. So, this is going to drag on for probably multiple different episodes here because I feel like it's such a topic that one episode is never going to do it justice, to be honest. And so much goes into it. And I think that just overall it's going to take some time, and I plan on having some guests moving forward with some of my buddies on here and get their ideas and how they feel about it. And also, if anybody's listening, I would love to hear you guys' feedback on what I'm saying here and also just hear what you guys think about it. But as far as the actual topic, it's going to be a couple different things. But the idea that I had was I was originally just going to go over like my top 10 favorite movies, probably some top 10 games, and do some talk about both of those. Well, as I was working on getting these lists, something kind of funny happened. It was as I realized I was writing this down, it dawned on me, a lot of these, not so much as the games, because that was kind of in my childhood, so they really couldn't have been made before I was born, not a whole lot of them, but definitely the movies. As I go through this list here in a little bit, you're probably going to pick up on a couple things. Most of these, well, a lot of them were stuff that came out when I was a kid. Obviously, that makes sense. People attach onto that, which is why we're talking about nostalgia. But also, a lot of these movies came out before I was even born. And also, I ended up making like a secondary list of movies that I felt like I couldn't just be left out, and then I felt bad for not including them in the list. It's ridiculous, but it's supposed to be 10, but I have more. I don't even know what the number is, but we'll just kind of go through them. So, I want to kind of stress one thing first. This is just my opinion. I do love movies, and I try to watch anything possible. I'm by no means some sort of expert. My opinion doesn't mean anything more than anybody else's, but as someone who loves movies, here we go. And I'm just gonna kind of name these off but not these are not technically in order. I just wanted to do my top 10, just name the 10, and then honestly get off easy because I probably could never even list out my top 10 and rank them. But to start off with, uh, this one's probably obvious if you know me whatsoever. That would be the original Ninja Turtles movie. I do have the movie poster on my wall, and I think I own the movie in either four or five different formats. I have the collector's edition first DVD set when it came out somewhere. I have it digital, I think, on two different platforms. Then I also have the Blu-ray collection. The Blu-ray collection, I think it came with like a some sort of pizza something or other. I can't remember. I own it on so many different platforms. The physical media, I usually just keep that up so it doesn't get damaged or lost or anything. I've definitely seen this movie over 100 times. Even as I watch it now, it still holds up to this day. It's one of those movies that I try to introduce everybody to that I meet. It's kind of like a thing. I just want to hear everybody's opinions on it. I know that there's kiddie moments and things like that, of course. I mean, it is cheesy. It's the Turtles, and there's quite the story. I've watched the documentaries about the movies and everything else, and quite the story about how it was made. And it was kind of made on a whim. They didn't think they'd get the financing and all kinds of crazy stuff. I won't go into that whole story because I ended up messing it up, and I don't know all the details, but I did watch the documentaries if you want to check those out. But yes, I've seen this movie so many times, so many quotable lines. I throw lines out all the time. people that know the movie usually laugh or say something. Everybody else just looks at me like I'm a nut job. But yes, always going to be on my list and near and dear to my heart. Obviously, Turtle fan for life. Second on my list, again, this is just what I wrote down. It's not the actual list order. Second would be The Crow. Obviously, the controversy with this movie is the death on the set of Brandon Lee. And we could do a whole nother episode on the idea of where Brandon Lee's career would be. And I actually probably do want to do that at some point, just to kind of get an idea of where we think that he could be at, because he had just, kind of hit his stride and got some big time movies. If you don't know about the story in this movie and what happened, I recommend you Google it. It's pretty crazy stuff and tragic, and that's there's no way to make that into a positive. But definitely one of my all-time favorite movies. Also, with this and the Turtles, there's something about embracing the darkness of characters and sets that just kind of draws me in. It makes me feel more of a connection. Not that I'm dark in nature or anything, but I guess just the realness. I love silliness too, but I have the most connection with the raw feelings and things like that. So I think that's just something that connects to me. Third on my list, Bloodsport. I'm sure you're probably laughing because it's a martial arts Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. Listen, I've always had an infatuation with Japanese culture and I've tried to study it. Again, I'm no expert by any means, but I do love the culture. If you could see the background here, my entire place is packed full of movie posters and just a lot of Japanese artwork. And I just love the culture. I know that they weren't in Japan for the movie. I know it was in Hong Kong. I get this. But the Asian culture overall, uh, the training montages, I mean, who doesn't love a training montage? And that will come up a little bit later. And of course, good versus evil, the overcoming story. Also, strangely enough, it's kind of off the wall, but the restaurant when I grew up, our house was actually near a restaurant called Chong Li's. That would also be the name of the main villain in this movie. That's just kind of an off-topic subject, but that does happen. But yeah, good versus evil, good comedy, good fight scenes, of course, training montage. How could you go wrong? This is probably an iconic one. This movie is probably an iconic one for many people. Lost Boys. Look, still the best vampire movie ever made. That's my opinion, of course, but I don't rock Twilight or whatever. If you guys listen, I mean, if you guys like Twilight, that's fine. I'm not saying you shouldn't. It's just not my vibe. It'd always be Lost Boys in my heart. So many classic actors. It's just one of those other ones that just relates to my childhood. And this is another movie that actually came out before I was ever born. But as the list goes on, you'll see that a lot of those movies just connect to me. I guess I'm just an old soul like that. But you can never go wrong with Kiefer Sutherland either. I mean, you just can't. Feldman, Haim, you can't go wrong. Uh, this next movie, the people that know me closely will know this movie. Everybody else, I encourage you to watch it, as ridiculous as the movie is. I promise it is for a good laugh. It's Swiss Army Man. Daniel Radcliffe after the Harry Potter movies. Listen, this movie is ridiculous. I'm not gonna lie. It has a lot of unforgettable scenes. It's one of these movies that everybody that I, get close with, I always make them watch this movie, and I always want to watch it with them because, as a warning, if you haven't watched it and do, this movie's going to change your life. That sounds absurd. I promise you, you're going to see some things you probably wish you could forget. Just stick through it, get to the end, and believe it or not, through all this madness by the end of the movie, it's going to hit you with this just profound ending, and it's going to shock you. Uh, there was a movie theater here that closed down many years ago, and this was actually the last movie that we went and saw right before it closed. So I guess that also holds a special place in my heart. Not gonna lie though, for an indie movie and the people in the theater, this is the hardest I've ever laughed in my life at a movie. That whole movie theater was just full of laughter. I've never seen anything like it before that or ever again. It's the movie something else. I wish I knew the guy's name. I apologize. But the actor is also the other lead in the movie. Just played in the new Batman movie as the Riddler. So very interesting. I think his name's Paul Dana. That's probably wrong. So don't kill me if you look it up. Sorry if I messed up your name. I never pictured him for that role in the new Batman movie, especially if you watch this movie. But my opinion, did a hell of a job. So interesting how that works out. The next movie on the list, it's the original Power Rangers movie. Look, Power Rangers was a huge part of my childhood growing up. Had all the action figures, had all the shows. This is actually something that, unfortunately, Jason David Frank, lost his life here. Who is Tommy Oliver, the Green and White Ranger, here shortly. Tragic. I never got the chance to meet him at the cons, unfortunately, that were around here, but everybody that I've ever seen that has said he was just an amazing guy and would do anything for people. But I have been going back and watching the original Power Ranger shows and just kind of getting the feel for them again and just kind of want to run through. As I got older, I didn't get every single iteration of the show, so there is a lot that I missed, but I did pick up like Dino Thunder. I just found out there was a sequel to the original Mighty Morphin called Zeo, and I plan on watching it. So and I realize that they're all technically a sequel, but I mean a direct sequel to Mighty Morphin, from my understanding. But I do plan on getting to that. But I didn't just want to jump straight to it, so I said I'm just going to start from the beginning, Power Rangers, so let's watch it through and go from there. This next movie on my list, no one's probably ever heard of. It's usually how it is. I'm just attracted to weird movies. This movie's called The Chase with Charlie Sheen. So it's I think it was 94. I could be wrong there. Anyways, I don't even know if it was a big production movie or an indie movie, to be honest. I never really paid that much attention. I don't even know how I even ran into this movie in the first place. But I saw it so many years ago, and I don't even think. I think it's one of those ones that's even like out of print, like it's not even on digital or nothing. You have to get the DVD, which luckily I have it. But anyways, I don't really want to spoil it for you, but it's about a Charlie Sheen hijacking somebody, or I guess forcing them and stealing their car at a gas station, and then it just kind of flips upside down. Henry Rollins is in it. I think her name's Christy Swanson. I think is her name. Could be wrong there. And Flea was actually in it. Believe it or not, it's random movie credit there, but it's a good movie. A lot of '90s stuff. It's just another one of those movies that crept up on me, hit me hard that I never really saw coming. So I would encourage that to check that out. Again, I don't think it's on digital, so look it up. For the DVD, you should be able to check that out. The next one, I think this movie's a little bit more popular. Not everybody's seen it though, but Short Circuit, another complete classic, obviously here. Most people just remember it for Johnny Five. I think a lot of people think the name of the movie is Johnny Five. Short Circuit, though, you get a twist ending there. Twist happy ending, thankfully. Otherwise, I think that probably would have tanked because that would have been just horrible. But I mean, I do like a good bad ending. But by bad, I mean just not happy ending. But definitely check it out. Good movie. Johnny Five, robots, a lot of family-friendly humor and pop culture references. So definitely worth checking out there. The next movie on this list is very iconic, Terminator 2. I've never met a single person that's ever told me the first Terminator was better than the second one, which also always leads to the question that never ends is what sequels are better than the originals, which the question is usually followed by other than Terminator 2, because that's the obvious answer. So maybe we'll do a podcast on that someday, the sequels that are better than the originals. I think that could be interesting. I don't know how many we'll come up with because I don't know how many real of them there are out there, but Terminator 2, absolute classic. So if you haven't seen it, definitely give it a watch. It's definitely the best of the series. This next one on my list, I could quote this movie so much. This came out probably when I was a teenager. Probably, one of those movies that, I don't know, probably 13 or 14 when it came out. And, but I had to fight myself to do this last. This is the last of the 10, but I have honorable mentions because I couldn't not mention the other ones. But Super Troopers. Uh, Again, Broken Lizard, great comedy group. Follow all their movies and always try to do the best and tried to. I don't even remember what I did, but I helped, donated to the Kickstarter for Super Troopers 2. No, it wasn't just me. Trust me, I don't have that kind of money, but that's how much I love those guys and just try to support people in their art like that. So, Super Troopers, so quotable. Farva, listen, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It is what most people probably would consider stoner humor. It's fine. If you don't like that kind of stuff, you may not like it. Definitely great though. Okay, honorable mentions. This is the stuff that I couldn't leave off the list that I was fighting with adding at number 10. This is just a small list. I probably have, I think, at least 1,000 digital movies and then plenty of TV series and different stuff like that on DVD. So by all means, it's not complete, but this is what I came up with. And eventually, as I have a buddies on here, we're going to do a more in-depth, and we'll go through their movies list as well. And I'm sure when that happens, I'll probably be throwing some more out there, and we'll just kind of go from there. You guys will learn that I have a pretty extensive library, and I just like a lot of different stuff. First on this honorable mentions, as I'll call it, Labyrinth. I mean, look, who doesn't like Labyrinth? And yes, I'm not talking about Pan's Labyrinth. I'm talking about actual Labyrinth. I've never seen Pan's Labyrinth, but I tell you, it's not Labyrinth. Just to clarify, so I don't get judged. I'm sure I probably already will be with having Super Troopers on my list, but listen, Labyrinth, absolute classic, Goblin King. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. Also, by the way, the legendary Jim Henson helped with that movie, which also helped with the original Ninja Turtles with the costumes. Can't miss it. Gotta watch it. This next one, I mean, look, I guess could fall on that list of sequels that are better than the original. Rocky 4. Who doesn't love Rocky 4? Even though when you break the movie down, it's basically an hour and 15 minutes of montages. But who doesn't love that? I mean, really. Can you tell me that any of the other Rocky movies were better than 4? I know we had, what was it, Mr. T and Hulk Hogan in the third one? Still. Not saying the other ones are great. Again, I do own the entire collection. Rocky 4, though. Can't go wrong with the montage. Next on the list, The Thing. The original, of course. Kurt Russell, Alaska. The iconic blood test to reveal, who the monster is in, is I guess the best way to say, or I'm not going to say transformer, but whoever you know what I'm trying to say. Whoever the Thing is in. Okay, let's just call it The Thing since the movie's called The Thing. I guess I'll stop overthinking it so I don't have to stutter all over the place. Yes, The Thing, Kurt Russell, absolute classic. I think it's been remade. Sorry, the original is still better. Next one on my list, another movie that I just quoted in something from, I guess, probably from my technical teenage years that's carried over to me, Role Models. Everybody, everybody still calls him McLovin, but yes, if that's what you know him as, McLovin's in this movie. Stifler, if you want to call him that too. That's what most people know him as. And then, of course, Paul Rudd. Absolute classic. Uh, can't go wrong. Play. I guess technically, it's about them getting in trouble and having to do community service, but a lot of the movie is about LARPing and them getting to know that and then trying to get close to these kids. If you haven't seen it, great comedy movie. Go watch it. This is just a classic that kind of was handed down to me. It's definitely before my time, but I liked the movie enough that I went back and looked up the history too, just to kind of see how accurate it was compared to the movie. And that would be La Bamba. Obviously, this is if you've seen it, you already know this is a movie about the tragic accident of Richie Valens. If you're not familiar with Richie Valens, he was a musician in the 60s that had just reached his peak popularity, and unfortunately, he dies in a plane accident. And it's kind of played throughout the movie that his whole life he's had premonitions and dreams about getting on an airplane, and then he has to get on one, and his manager's pushing him because they got to make a trip, and like they're sick. He's sick and doesn't want to ride the bus, and it'd be a terrible ride. So he gets on the plane, and then ends up dying. I don't remember everybody who's on it, but I believe Buddy Holly was also on the plane. But I don't mean to spoil the ending if you haven't seen it, but I'm sure you've probably heard, about the actual accident itself. But great movie, great acting. Such a sad story, to be honest. Um, but definitely worth the watch. So this next movie, I just want to point out, this is not the Britney Spears version that most people probably know with this name. It's fine if you like the Britney Spears version. I'm not hating, but just to clarify, it's Crossroads. This is Ralph Macchio in his day. This movie, I feel like definitely had to be an indie movie. This is something. This is something my family told me about that when I was younger, and had talked about it because this is more from their generation, as most of these movies are. But yeah, about Ralph Macchio and the tale of Robert Johnson. If you're not familiar with that, it's very interesting stuff. I believe a couple years ago, I think they made a documentary on Netflix or like a reimagining of some sort that I remember watching as well because I was just fascinated with it. But basically, the premise of the story is that Robert Johnson sold his soul to the devil to be a famous blues musician. And but that I mean that's not the story of the movie, but that's the tale about Robert Johnson. Now, in the movie, kind of dealing with the same type of elements there. I don't want to really say too much to give the whole movie away, but that's the kind of stuff you're working with. But it's a classic. Definitely give it a watch, um, for sure, especially if you like music. So I just kind of want to pivot a little bit. So I do plan on talking in the future, and I want to have my guests on here to talk about games. I did want to kind of mention too that before I move on to that conversation. So when I was talking about this movie list, I think what it really came down to is, other than Terminator 2, a lot of these movies aren't part of sequels, prequels, or anything like that. And I thought about it for a little bit, and I think the reason it came down to is when it's a series, other than when I feel like Terminator 2 because it's so blatantly better than all the other ones. In a series, it's hard for me to pick just one because I just like the series as a whole. So when it comes to stuff like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream, Harry Potter, I don't I pretty much love all those movies. I mean, Child's Play, like I'm a huge horror buff too, so I love all those movies and I own all those, but I couldn't pick just one of those because I felt like that I would almost be dogging on the other movies, and that's not what I wanted to do. So just to kind of clarify too, I thought it was kind of just a weird point to put out there that for some reason in my head they just kind of all stood together as one whole movie, even though it's a series. I don't know if that makes any sense, but yeah. So I just was talking about too. So this nostalgia thing, I think for me, being a gamer, I struggle with this a lot. And I think it's going to take a whole nother episode. And I want to have someone, at least a couple of my friends on here too, to have a good conversation. Because I don't think just me talking, I could give it good justice. and I think you guys deserve multiple viewpoints on that when it comes to games. And I'm going to have them talk about the movies and stuff later. But I think, gaming has exploded, obviously, within probably the past 5 to 10 years to be such a huge business. And, obviously Mario Nintendo was huge back in the day, but it's the biggest it's ever been. And it's definitely had its ups and downs, and it's almost nearly went away a couple times. But I think gaming has finally hit the mainstream. So I'm a person that I do own. So I own pretty much every retro console right now except for a Sega Saturn or a Sega CD. I don't want to throw shade, but I don't think there's a reason that I would want to own either one of those. Not trying to hate, but I've tried to justify it in my head for getting them, and I just can't, especially with what they're still going for because they didn't sell very well. So those are the two I don't have. I have everything else from, except for Atari. Okay, I don't have Atari. Not trying to lie. I have everything from Super Nintendo and regular Nintendo up. Original Xbox, Xbox 360. I'm not just naming off stuff to brag, but I'm just trying to paint the picture. Okay, that I have all this nostalgia stuff. So I have this option of when I go to play these games, and I've been playing a lot of the retro games lately. And this is kind of also what led to this discussion is something missing in new video games, or is it just that things from our childhood or things from a different time in life just really are that much better? I will just kind of say that, and I don't have an answer for that right now, but just to kind of give you something to ponder about. So, another thing is, just a thought. What is it about zombie games that have such staying power? I'm a huge Resident Evil fan, have been from the beginning, and obviously they have sequels, and that's kept going on. But there's actually a pretty large community of people that still play all the originals, including myself. And I'm not gonna lie, the originals, specifically Resident Evil 3, to me is the best the series has ever been and will probably ever be. That's just my opinion. Now, there is nostalgia attached to that. I have tested the theory, though. I've played and beaten every Resident Evil that's ever been released, and I have went back and played 3 multiple times. I'm talking about the original. Like they remade the game for 3, but let's be honest, they cut the game in half, and I just wasn't a fan. I feel like they just okay, the graphics were better, and they tried to bring it to a new generation, and that's a good thing because everybody deserves to be able to have games, and everybody deserves to like what they want to like. That's not even a discussion. But I just think, in my opinion, for the love I had for 3, the bar was already set high, and then I feel like they definitely dropped the ball remaking 3. The remake for 2 is pretty great. They didn't really do a whole lot to mess that up. The 3, it's pretty much almost cut the game in half. You can run through and beat the game in like 3 hours, 3.5 hours, not even really trying. I don't know what the deal is with that, but it's probably a podcast for itself. But back to that, as far as zombie games go, Resident Evil is huge. Left 4 Dead 1 and 2. So you play on PC, they've merged 1 onto 2 now. But I don't even know how many years it's been, but the community is still making DLC for this game. I know everybody that loves zombie games wants to see Left 4 Dead 3. I don't know if we're ever going to get it. We did get Back 4 Blood. I hope that Back 4 Blood has that kind of following, which is a pretty good game in its own right. But I hope that Back 4 Blood 3, or not Back 4 Blood 3, let's not jump ahead 2 games. I hope that Back 4 Blood can have that kind of stay. I just hope that. I guess I want to see a game recreate the magic that what I felt like it was when I was a teenager or whatever age group I was in, you know, teenager to 20-year-old, something in there. I don't even know. But to me, those games were magic and still are. I still play it on PC and I still feel about it the same way I did back then. So I think that now there has been some good zombie games. Like I said, I do like Back for Blood. World War Z was actually a smash hit for me as a surprise. But I don't think anything's ever captured the magic of Left 4 Dead. And I feel like the same goes for Resident Evil. The original first three are my top three, but Resident Evil 3 Nemesis is just the favorite it's ever going to be for me. Hopefully, one day I can recapture that because I feel like we all deserve just to capture some of that magic so we can kind of get that. It's kind of the idea of like getting that if you could go back in time and forget that you watched a movie for the first time so you could rewatch it to get that magic or that butterflies or whatever feeling it gets you, would you do it? It would be hard to say that you would not because if you're passionate about stuff like that, like I am, as you'll learn that that feeling is everything. It has a lasting impression still to this day. Here we are on this podcast talking about this, movies that are 20, 30 years old now because when you watch it, it makes you feel a certain way, and games have that too. Games you can get lost in for even longer periods of times. So I can't wait to get in that discussion. And I haven't pre-asked any of my friends yet for their list. We did have a small discussion about our movies, so those could also change now that they've had time to think. So when it comes to games, you guys are going to be hearing it as I'm hearing it. So there may be some surprise, honestly, for me on what the answers are going to be. And I haven't even made my list. And I don't even know if I can. I'm probably going to say 10 and then end up with 1,000 like I did here today. But I am looking forward to that very much. I had another idea as well, just to kind of wrap things up on this episode, because the gaming episode is probably going to be a long episode and probably multiple parts, because I'm just very passionate about gaming and I can talk forever. I have an idea. I'll be honest with you. I've wanted to do stand-up comedy for a long period of time, and I've tried to study a lot of the greats, and I at least consider myself to be mildly funny. You guys probably don't, but that's fine. I'm kidding. Hopefully, well, at least somebody gets to laugh, listen to this podcast. If it's at my expense, that's even better. But yeah, so we went to a comedy show the other night. My friends, you'll meet them. I don't want to throw out a bunch of names because you guys are. If you, I feel like if you don't hear a voice, and I'm gonna have them share stories about how we met and everything too, so you have an idea of our connection with one another and why we still have a group chat between all of us that we all talk to one another on, where everybody can see for going on 15 years now, I believe. So it's more like a brotherhood, and this is also my D&D group. So I think for you guys to fully understand from the outside who may not know us personally of what you're working with, I want to share some stories, and we've got a lot. A lot of them are laughing at our own expense, and that's perfectly fine with me. But I do want to bring them on, but I want to give you guys some context. I just don't want to throw you out with a bunch of different names and expect you to connect with these people or know who they are. So I'm trying to take that approach. So for now, I'm just going to call them my buddies. And once you get to know them, I'm going to start calling them by name. And then you can also laugh at their expense like I do. And you'll learn all we ever do is talk shit on one another. And we hardly ever take anything serious. So hopefully you guys can take that approach. So now to get off my pedestal here and of talking about nothing, just to kind of went off course there. But stand-up comedy is something I've always wanted to do. Honestly, I've just been too scared to get up on stage. It's ridiculous. I'm sitting here recording this podcast with pretty much no notes about anything other than my movies. But I've always had a passion for stand-up comedy. I love it. I love the act of comedy. I think if people laughed more, obviously we do have moments where we have to be serious. Not everything's funny, but I've got a thing. If bad things happen to me, if I can laugh about it, then other people can too. Helps people heal and move on. That's just how I look at it. So when that comes to comedy, I just want to something I've always wanted to share. I've got stage fright. We did go to a comedy show the other night, and there was a couple open mics. Both the dudes are really funny. They came out first that were local. And I thought to myself, again, that's something I want to do so much. I even wrote down a few jokes, and I'm not going to go over yet, but I've had an idea of just throwing out me doing like a mini comedy skit just in between our regular podcasts and throwing them on here. I want to know what you guys think, if you'd care, and also if you do and listen to it, give me your honest opinion. Think about what the idea and just let me know. I do want to let you guys know we do have the socials up. Uh, you can email any questions or comments to it's the name of the podcast. It's Genuine Unintelligence at gmail.com. You can also message me on Twitter at Genuine Unintelligence. Right now, it's just me running everything. I don't have any mods or anything, so if you do message me, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And once everybody else gets involved and I get this remote recording situation figured out, or I just make everybody come to my house to record, we'll be back on shortly. I want to thank you all very much for listening. Please hit me with your feedback, and we'll be back shortly with part 2 of Nostalgia Talk. Have a good night.